Today we are going to be speaking to Bill Scher, certainly a familiar face on the show, although in a literal sense, the current hairstyle and beard makes him look a little bit different than normal. Bill Scher is a contributor to the Washington Monthly, Politico Magazine, and RealClearPolitics, and also hosts the history podcast When America Worked. Bill, always great to have you on.
Do I still hold the record for most David Pakman appearances, or have I lost that?
I think so. There was a period where Richard Wolff surpassed you, but you've taken it back now, I think, which is good, Okay, so we've got the 1-6 commission moving forward, but that's not a Biden proposal. Joe Biden has talked about, he has this tax reform plan, he has a jobs plan, he has an infrastructure plan. There are different ideas for how different of elements would be paid for and disagreements as to the size of packages and all of these different things. If you just look at the rest of this year, do any of those things get done? Which is the most likely? Which is the likely to benefit Biden the most politically?
Well, I think Biden has made clear inaction is not an option in terms of infrastructure.
Okay.
I don't think he can go back to the voters in 2022 and said, sorry, I got bupkis, but I fought really hard.
Mm-hmm.
He needs something. And what's interesting is what's happening with the 1-6 commission, which seems very bitter, partisan, fractious. Yes, you got 35 House Republicans that came over, but McCarthy was against it. McConnell came out against it. It seems like it's same old, moving farther and farther apart. While that's happening, Biden continues to meet with Republican leaders on infrastructure.
Right.
And Mitch McConnell, of all people, says, I think we can do $600, $800 billion. Now, Democrats aren't necessarily over the moon about that, but it's hardly the same as I want to make Joe Biden a one-term president. I'm not going to give him anything for anything. There is some, and I understand people can be mistrustful and cynical about McConnell's motives here. I'm not arguing that McConnell is a saint or doing something out of the goodness of his heart, but clearly there is something there that he does not want to be seen as obstructionist on infrastructure. There is a worry on the Republicans' part. And the question is, can Biden exploit that to get a bill with 60 votes, which he may need to get if he cannot get 50 for a partisan reconciliation bill on infrastructure?
Well, now, so I guess I've been thinking about whether the fear of appearing obstructionist is warranted, because I mean, just to think a little bit about the 1.9 trillion COVID stimulus under Biden, where people got the $1,400. There were two discussions when that was going on. One, will the Democrats suffer if they pass this without Republican support? I think the answer is clearly no. People got their $1,400 and they're pleased with that. And some even believe that Republicans actually had a role to play. We just looked at a bunch of polling. Many of the people who got the $1,400 don't know that they got it only because of Democrats. The other side of that was, will Republicans suffer in any way for having not participated at all in a COVID stimulus bill that was quite popular with the American people? It seems the answer there is also sort of no, at least as far as I can tell right now. So what I'm kind of getting to is, if Democrats just keep doing stuff on their own when they can, and the things that require 60 votes, obviously, though, they can't do that. Is there really going to be any consequence for anybody for Democrats just doing stuff on their own?
What's an unknown here is inflation. We don't know what the economy is going to look like 6 months from now, 1 month from now, or 1 year from now. We have an inflationary spike in the past month, for which the Biden people say is temporary. The Fed thinks it's temporary. The Fed thinks it can manage it. It's not going to go off the rails.
Well, remember, I mean, it wasn't from March to April. It was April 21 compared to April 20, where there was a complete demand collapse. Everything was cheaper than ever. I mean, I think it's quite possible that it's an artifact, really.
Well, there's also a month-to-month inflation increase too.
That one I haven't seen.
The bigger spike is year to year.
Yeah, okay,
but there is a March to April also.
I hadn't seen that.
But again, it could just be the weirdness of coming out of a pandemic that will correct itself.
Yep.
Or not. So I think both parties are kind of waiting and watching to see who's going to get the better of that argument down the road. But having said that, you're not seeing Republicans say we should not have any infrastructure bill because we're in the midst of inflation and that would just make things worse.
Yeah.
Because that's a long-term bill. That's for 8 to 10 years. It's not about today. And there are Republicans that still want to bring home some bacon to their own states and districts. So, and on top of that, I think, I can't say it for as a fact, I think McConnell wants to be able to say he did something. He would like to obstruct a lot of other things, but wants to be able to say, hey, look, I'm a reasonable guy. I met them halfway on physical traditional infrastructure, and that gives me the credibility to block him on all these other things. They are talking. What the two parties are saying on infrastructure have overlap. The red lines that are being drawn do not negate the possibility of a compromise. And again, Biden can't come up with nothing. No, Joe Manchin could say, okay, forget the Republicans. They're not being reasonable here. We tried. You gave your best shot. I'll go with you on reconciliation right now. Mm-hmm. He is not there yet. And we don't know if he's ever going to get there. So you may be right in saying, hey, Democrats can do this politically without repercussion. That's only true if 50 Senate Democrats agree to do that.
Yeah.
If Manchin doesn't agree or Kirsten doesn't agree or what have you, then you just can't do it. And I think as long as Republicans are putting semi-reasonable proposals on the table, I don't think a Joe Manchin pulls the plug on the process, and that might require you to do that kind of deal.
One of the changes in the Republican Party, certainly during the Trump era, but in particular in the last 4 months, is that while, okay, Mitch McConnell is going to meetings and a few Republicans are going to meetings to talk about things, the Republican Party is not really a party of policy at this point in time. Some members of the House just straight up say it. I mean, Madison Cawthorn's office has said, we're not running a policy office, we're running a communications office, and we're doing tweets and we're doing memes and we're doing, talking about guns on the House floor, on his wheelchair and all of this different stuff. At some point, will that implode, or can that be viable when Republican voters don't seem to mind the idea of just getting in the way of Democrats and not really doing anything?
Well, this is what both the Democratic and Republican negotiators have to consider. I mean, you look at the majority of the Republican Party, you look at polls, you look at the House caucus, you'd say this is a party still obsessed with Trump, cult of personality, not interested in real legislating or governing, just want to fight culture war battles and exploit grievances. And how can you work with that? But here you got Liz Cheney making the minority point within the Republican Party. We have to get back to being a party of substance and policy. We can't sustain as a cult of personality party. I'm not quoting her verbatim here, but I think that's the gist of what she's saying.
Well, but also, I mean, I have to say, she voted with Trump like 93% of the time. The policy she wants to get back to, I don't know. I'm not sure that she's really that different.
Well, no, Liz Cheney wants to get back to hawkish foreign policy.
Yeah.
She wants the Republican Party to be a neocon party again.
Yeah, true.
That's her.
Okay.
Now, do you have in the Senate enough Republicans who take a longer view, say, look, we can't survive as a cult of personality party. That may be fine if you want to hold on to 200 House seats. But if you actually want to be a majority again, if you want to get the presidency again, you want to have a Senate that functions again, that we have the upper hand with, we have to look beyond the immediate passions of our base. And we have to show that we can do it and survive doing it. This is an opportunity for the Romneys and the Portmans and the Capitos and perhaps the McConnells to say, we can still do this, bring home stuff for our states and our districts, and people will respect us for it. And if that sentiment is there, can Biden, can Schumer, can Manchin, can they draw that out and come up? I mean, the bill that presumably can get done is $800 billion traditional infrastructure without raising taxes on corporations, or not a lot on corporations. Some bitter pills for Democrats to swallow in that, but still something that Biden could go back to the public and say, I did this. Tangible stuff that we did, delivered for you, reward us in 2022 and 2024 for it. there is a potential for common ground there if both parties see short-term / long-term incentive for their own parties.
There is, I believe, no chance that the capital gains rate gets increased the way Joe Biden has signaled he would want to do. I think it's just one of those things that in the end isn't going to happen. It seems very exciting to a lot of people. I think there's a very interesting budget calculation in terms of what it would do. It would be significant. I see that as an example of something that is destined to die, and it's not happening. Am I being unrealistic in my analysis of that piece?
Not necessarily. And look, let me try to tie a few threads together, if I may.
Yes.
So Biden has two big tax proposals connected to the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan.
Right.
The American Jobs Plan, which is mostly traditional infrastructure, but gets a little non-traditional long-term care, school construction, things that Republicans don't count as traditional. That's tied to the corporate tax increases. Joe Manchin has said, I don't want to go as far as you do, Joe Biden. I'll meet you halfway there. So you already have some indication that Biden doesn't have 50 Democrats for his proposal as is. Republicans say, we don't want to touch the Trump tax cut at all.
Right.
We want to increase user fees, maybe increase the gas tax, maybe create a new vehicle mileage tax, which would hit electric cars and hybrid cars more.
We don't want that.
What's that?
I don't want that.
Well, it's not crazy. We have functioned on a user pays principle for highways for over 50 years. It's not a new idea the Republicans have. The only newness is extending it to hybrid and electric cars.
Right.
So again, if you're Joe Biden and getting a bill is first and foremost, and you can't get 50 for your ideal tax plan, that makes the Republican plan more relevant in the discussion. So Biden may say, you know what, I don't need to do the corporate tax hike here. Now, so let me add one other element here. What's the other big thing that Biden really needs? He needs to extend that child tax credit expansion.
Right.
That is a signature policy achievement. The monthly checks are going to start coming in July, but they expire after December. If they run out, you've not only lost your signature policy achievement, people are going to be mad. Hey, you gave me these checks and now you cut me off. And this might have to get decided during an inflationary spike, where people might say, hey, Biden, you put too much money in the system. You're overheating the economy. The only way you can argue you're not going to overheat is with a pay for, by not having be deficit spending, but having those checks be offset with other tax revenue, which some Democrats like Angus King, who's independent but caucus with Democrats, have already said, I want that paid for. You're not going to get so child tax credit expansion, $100 billion a year. The corporate tax hike plan of Biden's is $166 billion a year. And the taxes in the American Families Plan, which are on wealthy individuals, that's another $100 billion a year.
Right.
There's only so many pots of money here. So if you need $100 billion a year to cover the child tax credit expansion to extend it beyond 2021, that's probably going to be a reconciliation bill. You're probably not going to get Republicans to come along and help save your partisan policy achievement. So save your partisan tax proposal for that and work with Republicans on something that's not as partisan for the infrastructure bill. I think that's where the stars are most likely to align.
The thing I really continue not to understand about the corporate tax rate discussion, and maybe this is by design and this is exactly the theater that they want, the corporate tax rate being 21, 28, or 35, it has a far smaller impact than a lot of people believe. First of all, because it doesn't apply to sole proprietorships. It doesn't apply to LLCs. It doesn't apply to S corporations, all of which are taxed as pass-through entities at the personal income tax rate. So then you've got just the bucket of C corporations and a few other specific entities that are subject to the corporate tax rate. But many of them are paying 0 or 9 or 11 or 7% anyway because of the extensive deductions and a lack of a corporate alternative minimum tax. So I feel like it's a sort of insane asylum discussion about Manchin thinks this, and it was 35 and 28, when it's not really the way that you capture tax revenue from C corporations anyway, unless you deal with the other stuff. Are both sides just agreeing to pretend that's not an issue?
Well, that's why it's relatively easy for Biden to say, okay, Joe Manchin, I'll come down to 28 to 25 on the corporate income tax rate, because the bigger issue are the loopholes.
Right.
I don't want to make sure they can't escape paying the rate at all. But that's going to be a very hard thing to negotiate. I think you can negotiate with Joe Manchin. There's probably some middle ground there with the Joe Manchin. It may not be exactly what Biden has right now, but you can get something from him. Much, much harder to get that with Republicans.
Yeah.
So why try? Why kill yourself to get 60 votes on the corporate tax reform, which would probably be very, very difficult, be very, very watered down, when you need some big money for the child tax credit expansion? So that's why I think, again, I can't promise this is what's going to happen. Maybe they go full partisan across the board. Right. Maybe they shoot the moon completely because Republicans are too obstructionist. I can't negate that possibility. But so long as Republicans are in the game, and so long as Manchin's keeping them in the game, I think you got to keep in mind that you got to have a pay for in your back pocket by the end of the year, especially if inflation is spiking, and you got to show that you're paying for your checks.
A lot to look forward to, I think, is the point. And certainly as we get into 2022, things that, the child tax credit may play significantly in the 2022 midterm. So these are not merely academic discussions, I think is fair to say. We've been speaking with Bill Scher, contributor to the Washington Monthly, Politico Magazine, and RealClearPolitics, and of course, host of the history podcast, When America Worked. Bill, always great having you on.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.